72. Anyone have a guess in that time period?
6%.
6%. Okay. Popular. Someone else?
3.
3? The 30? What'd you say? 3. Somebody else? Okay, you're not a penalty here. Sir, you're a maker. 8%. Since your phone rang, what do you think? 10%. It's a little over 4%. So let's go now. The next number we said that was 72. What about 72 to 82? Any guess on that?
1%.
1%. This group is very different. Most of the people are 8, 10, 15, 20%. This is a very sophisticated group. Sir?
10.
10%. Okay. Ma'am? Oh, sir? 5%. Sir? 3. Anyone else? Minus 1.8%. Now let's go from 1982 to 1999. Anyone want to venture a guess? 10. Sir?
8.
8. 5. 6. Ma'am? Did I? 4.
7.
7. 16.4. 16.4. So post 1999, for years, people were remembering that 17 or 18 year period where if you hit a dartboard, 10% was easy. How about from 1982 forward?
82 or 99?
Let's go. I'm sorry, 99 forward. Thank you, sir. My apologies. So you've had a lot of cycles in there. Any ideas?
3%.
We're near highs, huh?
2%.
2%. Great. It's a very conservative group.
15.
15. 6. Anyone else? It's about 4.5. So if you look for the last 107 years, if you go to most audiences, and I've had the privilege of talking to most people, the expectation of 10% or more is common over that time period. Now, you get dividends, but you also have taxes and inflation to worry about. So this is only price change. But the point is, with all the ups and downs in the market and all the things that are hyped, the stock market is represented by the Dow Industrial Average, is probably a poorer performer than most people have expected, with all the promotions of, buy our product and do this and that, and you're going to get very wealthy. The reality is, over 107 years, in different cycles, there are ups and downs. That 16.4% is key, and I'll come back to that, because that had to do with the government action, which I think was great for the short term, but very catastrophic for the long term. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the past, the present, some possibilities in the future, a couple pieces of math. So if you have your thinking caps on, we're going to talk about bonds, and those of you who are in the bond market, and some things to consider. Some challenges for the U.S., a few specifics on investments and taxes and opportunities to do nice things here at St. Leo, too, if you so desire, and some things for the future. And I do hope you'll ask whatever kinds of questions, because it's a very bright group, and with the stimulation, we may have some interesting disagreements or agreements what is going on. A lot of what I'm going to say is constructive for the short term. It's very worrisome for the long term. If you look at things that are positive, there is still no place in the country that I'm aware of that can match this country for innovation. Go back to IBM in the 50s and 60s, even Xerox with all the problems they've had now. You get into companies like Apple and Google, and whether it's Facebook or Twitter, those innovations happened in this country. And if you look at the cultures in other areas where education is very high in the eastern part of the world, their thought processes, I think, are such where it's harder for them to innovate. You look at incentives for entrepreneurship in this country. I mean, there are brilliant ideas that are out there. And people are old. I mean, there's just so many clever things that are going on. And that's, I think, going to continue. We have many highly talented, very skilled, and motivated people. When you look at the social networking kinds of things, I mean, who would have thought that these things would have developed? It would be here. And in terms of technology, there's no place better in the world. And I think that our future, because of that, is much, much brighter than it would otherwise appear. If you look at accomplishments, and this is an area of concern, to do these things now is much harder than it used to be. After, I hate to talk about war, but the Japanese had no idea what they unleashed on December 7th. This country pulled together like something, and most of us were not necessarily here at that time, but just the thoughts and the teamwork and everything else, the dedication, was something that was unique. Even in the 1950s with President Eisenhower, the National Highway Program was a major innovation. And today, with what goes on in Congress, it's very hard to get agreement on anything. If you look at things in medical developments, they're not all government funded, but we'll talk about Social Security in a little while. One of the problems with Social Security, it was developed in the Roosevelt administration when the life expectancy was considerably less than 65. Well, now, I mean, a lot of folks are expecting from original birth to get to the upper 70s, and people who are older are likely to get in their 80s, 90s, or more. It's still 65. And the amount of payment that is expected, and we have an actuary here, at least one, has changed dramatically over time. We haven't changed the revenue formula sufficiently in order to cover it. We didn't get to the Apollo program. The joke was that we get to the moon the year the New York Mets win the World Series. Who would have believed 1969? I think some people thought Apollo was more likely than the Mets. Unfortunately, a Bills fan, that's even less likely of anything happening that way. But this country, when it pulls together, does things. One of our challenges is that we really have splintered in a way that's extremely hard to do. So you can add some addition there. So the next. I should have mentioned earlier things like with the smartphones and the communications. I mean, the changes that have happened. It's remarkable. Going around campus looking at how the kids using technology. It's not surprising, but it's certainly different than years ago. A little background on some history to bring back. We talked a little bit about 1980 to 82. Some of you may remember, but Paul Volcker, who was one of my heroes, he went after inflation, and what he did is that he forced interest rates higher, which did a lot of harm short-term to the economy, but it was extremely effective. So prime rate was over 20%, 1980 to 82 period. For part of it, if anyone had family members who were getting mortgages, depending on when in that cycle, they could have been 15, 16, 17%. And that affected economic activity. So if somebody says interest rates couldn't go up a lot, I don't think people would have expected it. But that was a government policy that was extremely effective at accomplishing its goals. Now what happened was, Alan Greenspan professionally, I'm not an advocate of, he did something that made people very happy, and a lot of bankers here. By lowering interest rates, it became a major incentive, and it fueled a big part of the economic growth for the next 17 or 18 years. The problem is, it's like withdrawing from a bank. You take interest rates and move them from 18, 20% down to very nominal numbers. Very stimulative for the economy, but once that happens, then what do you do? And it became extremely accommodating, and it was great for the equity markets, it was great for employment, and it made the economy really sizzle. And those people who had the White House during those time periods benefited from that economic situation. We had in 1987 a very brief stock market crash, and I remember the day of, and having calls with clients. We had reduced exposure, but that's not my point. And some of the weird, very strange conversation, I'd say, your account went down this, and I'm very upset, and they're thanking me. And again, it's not about an advertisement. You see how much somebody could have gone down. If you go down, if you went down 5 or 8% instead of 22, that's still a huge amount of money for people. But that recovered very quickly, and I don't think people knew what was going to happen after that very brief crash. And then we had the enormous technology bubble of 2000 to 2002, and those that were in technology stocks under the NASDAQ, which is a huge market index, believe it or not, that index lost 80% of its value. And companies like Global Crossing were gone, Northern Telecom were gone. You know, and there were certainly lots of others that had huge economic hits. Many of the companies never recovered, and that was a tough time. But that was an overheated situation where valuations got crazy. We had moderate economic growth through June of 2007, and then pieces of the next period came to light, and they were shocking in terms of the subprime mortgage problems, some of the loans that had gone out, some of the insurance that really wasn't there to cover things, and our economy almost collapsed. And I do believe that people like Paulson and Bernanke, and I give President Bush and President Obama a lot of credit. I think they've done an excellent job in dealing with a terrible situation. Now, there's no excuse for us getting into it, and those who were earlier have to take responsibility. But once it came in, I think that they really did a good job of trying to deal with the problem. They could have taken the economy to its knees. Now, where are we at this point? Deficits in the federal and state area post 2007, 2009 were at the highest levels ever. And on the positive side, we have recovered, I think, much more than most people, including myself, would have expected. State and local governments, the deficits in California looked like there was no way around them. Whether you're a Jerry Brown fan or not, and they took a lot out of education and they've raised taxes, their budget situation is radically different. It's not great, radically different than it was 4 or 5 years ago. In New York State, Andrew Cuomo has ended up raising taxes up to a point for more successful people, and that has expired in part. Cut education, unfortunately, but the financial situation in New York State is vastly improved. Likewise in New Jersey with Chris Christie, who's controversial with many people, but he's had a lot of courage dealing with that as well. Those 3 states have made a lot of progress. That's the people from Illinois. Illinois is a major concern. As long as the president's in office, I can't, it's hard to imagine that that Illinois will get into more serious trouble. But they have a huge budget shortfall, and they haven't raised taxes or cut spending sufficiently to deal with it. We have some municipal bonds. I was talking with someone earlier. The last ones in Illinois we're holding January 15th. They're all gone, and they're basically all highly rated. But we're nervous about that. Anything near Detroit, you have to worry about. Harrisburg, Pennsylvania is basically bankrupt. Stockton, California, and 2 other cities are in horrible shape, and I understand Stockton, after Detroit, is looking at trying to renegotiate, but they already renegotiated with the unions, and it's a very hard problem. Union members, policemen, firemen negotiated contracts with pensions. The mayors come in, and they have a choice. They can go to the union and say, I want to cut your pensions dramatically, and trying to deal with that would be almost impossible. They can go to the taxpayers saying, we're going to have to raise taxes a lot, then we'll get reelected. Or they can say, I'm not going to worry about it, I'll let the next mayor deal with it. And that's what's going on. And the shortfalls in the state and local pension area are huge. And they, in some cities like San Diego, are viewed by some as being so far over that over time, they're not going to be able to meet those obligations. So we're very careful with municipal bonds, not that something that couldn't surprise you. But that is a real concern. On the positive side, when we look at some of the sectors, I mean, look at the auto industry. It was we had 2 of the 3 companies go bankrupt. They've reorganized. They're much more profitable. Ford just got upgraded. And I think the quality of the cars, the economics of them are all better. And that industry, while it went through a terrible amount of turmoil and a lot of people lost jobs and investors lost a lot of money, has made a major